Mr. President, I'm here with Senator Nelson, Senator Whitehouse, and Senator Cardin because I share their concerns about the rising chorus of partisan attacks not only on Special Counsel Robert Mueller, but also on the Federal Bureau of Investigation and the Department of Justice. These attacks are part of a broader campaign that's been orchestrated by the White House to undermine the investigations into Russia's interference in the 2016 campaign, including possible collusion by the Trump campaign. Now, unfortunately, if continued, it will have a lasting impact on our security structures, on our democratic institutions, and on our people. And ultimately, it will help the Kremlin achieve its goal to break down our country and our democratic way of life. In a report issued January 2017, the United States intelligence community found that Russia interfered in our elections. This was the unanimous conclusion of all 17 U.S. intelligence agencies. Indeed, that Russian interference continues to this day, not only in the domestic affairs of the United States, but in the affairs of our Western allies. We've seen the Kremlin's hand in Great Britain, in Spain, in France, and in Mexico, all in an effort to determine the outcome and disrupt elections in those countries. Just last week, CIA Director Mike Pompeo confirmed Russia's ongoing interference in an interview with the BBC. As Senator Cardin said, when he was asked, Director Pompeo, if Russia would try to influence our midterm election this year, he replied, and I quote, "Of course. I have every expectation that they will continue to try and do that." In fact, in recent weeks, Russian internet trolls and bots have used Facebook and Twitter to aggressively promote the release of the House Republicans' memo by Devin Nunes attacking the integrity of the FBI. So let's think about that. Russia gave a powerful assist to the successful campaign to release a misleading document undermining an ongoing FBI investigation. And yet, despite these disturbing facts, President Trump continues to be dismissive of claims of any Russian interference. For 6 months, Congress has expected the administration to impose the penalties in the bipartisan Russia sanctions bill that passed this body 98-2. But the administration has not even issued one sanction through that law. Despite ongoing brazen Russian interference, the White House claims that sanctions are not needed because the threat of sanctions is already, quote, serving as a deterrent. But the mere threat of sanctions is clearly not serving as a deterrent. Our national security agencies, NATO systems, even the Senate have experienced cyber attacks since the 2016 elections. Yet, Vladimir Putin continues to deny that Russia interferes in anything at all. And for support, the President Putin can point to President Trump's own denials of Russian interference. Now, President Trump has a penchant for labeling factual reports as fake news. Again and again, he says things that are obviously false or misleading. He calls responsible mainstream journalists, quote, the enemy of the people. He attacks the rule of law, the judiciary, and our law enforcement agencies. These things are all classic hallmarks of the slippery slope toward authoritarianism. And indeed, it's striking how attacks by some Republicans on our law enforcement and democratic institutions echo similar attacks by the Kremlin and its mouthpieces. So consider these side-by-side comparisons of statements by Russian officials and statements by Republicans. So as we see in this tweet, which is dated January 2nd, 2018, President Trump has described U.S. government employees and the Justice Department as the deep state. At the same time, Russia's propaganda network, RT, has repeated this terminology. So we see deep state takedown? Just yesterday, RT aired a discussion focusing on how to root out the deep state now that its biases supposedly have been exposed by the Nunes memo. So in the next one, again, we see these mirror messages between the Republicans, the White House, and Putin. As we see in this panel, allegations that Special Counsel Mueller and the FBI are conducting a, quote, witch hunt are coming from the highest levels of both the American and Russian governments. So we see Reuters has repeated a line from RIA, which is Russia's state television, saying U.S. scandal over Russia contacts is a witch hunt. That sentiment was repeated by Representative Andy Biggs, who calls a Republican who's calling on Mr. Mueller to end the witch hunt, and of course was tweeted by Donald Trump, who called it all of the illegal leaks of classified and other information as a total witch hunt. And then in panel 3, we see that both Vladimir Putin and President Trump claim that there is no way to know for sure who meddled in the U.S. election. We can see the two of them. They blame Democrats for allegations of Russian meddling. Putin said, and again, looking at similar language, Putin said maybe somebody lying in bed was responsible. So repeating that, and it repeated what President Trump famously said when he said it could be someone sitting on their bed that weighs 400 pounds. Well, no. It's unfortunate that some Republicans, as well as voices in the conservative media, appear to believe that in order to support the president, they must attack and discredit not only Special Counsel Mueller, but also the Department of Justice and the FBI. These partisan attacks are baseless and reckless, and they will not succeed in deflecting law enforcement from its duties and mission. But what they may do, they may well succeed in undermining the American people's faith and confidence in these institutions so vital to a healthy democracy. And that's not only unfortunate, it's shameful. Last summer, members of Congress came together on an overwhelmingly bipartisan basis to impose sanctions on Russia because people here believed that they were interfering in our elections. Republicans and Democrats spoke with one voice. We said our country has been attacked by a hostile power, we will not tolerate it, and we will stand together to stop it. Today, it's critical that we continue to speak with one voice in condemning Russia's interference. This is a really remarkable moment in our country's history. A hostile foreign power has interfered in our presidential election, and it continues to interfere. CIA Director Pompeo said in no uncertain terms that Russia will interfere in this year's midterm elections. Our law enforcement agencies and a special counsel are working diligently to uncover the scope and methods of Russia's interference so that we can put a stop to it. And supporting these efforts isn't about party, it's not about partisanship, it's about patriotism. It's about defending America's democracy, which has been attacked and continues to be vulnerable to attack. Make no mistake, our democracy is being tested. Our law enforcement agencies are being tested, and we as senators are being tested. We have a responsibility to come together, senators of both parties, to defend the independence of the Justice Department and the FBI. We must insist that Special Counsel Mueller be allowed to conduct and complete his investigation without further political interference. And we must stand together in opposing Russia's outrageous continuing interference in America's elections and domestic affairs. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the floor.